My daughter went to the bathroom on the cruise, and the waiter whispered to me, "Don't drink that." 12 hours later, my will was changed. I never thought a stranger's words would save my life and open my eyes to a betrayal that had been brewing for years. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I'd tell. And if, for just a second, you feel like this sounds familiar, I only ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening myself. The Caribbean air felt heavy that July afternoon as I first stepped aboard the Caribbean Dream. My trembling hands clung to the metal railing while my orthopedic shoes squeaked against the ship's polished floor. It was a sound that embarrassed me. But at 73, comfort had won the battle against vanity a long time ago. Amanda, my daughter, walked a good 20 feet ahead of me, her perfectly styled hair fluttering in the sea breeze. She wore a white linen dress that cost more than my monthly Social Security check, and her designer sandals made an elegant clicking sound against the deck. Every so often, she'd turn back to me with that smile I knew so well, tense, forced, like when she was a little girl and had to pretend to be grateful for a gift she didn't like. "Mom, hurry up a little. People are staring," she murmured without moving her lips, a skill she'd perfected for scolding me without others hearing. Her eyes, which once shone with genuine love when she was a child, now scanned me up and down with a mix of impatience and shame that cut through me like a silent knife. Behind us, Ethan, my 23-year-old grandson, had his eyes glued to his phone, filming stories for his social media. He'd occasionally look up to capture some angle of the ship, always making sure I was out of frame. He was wearing a brand-name shirt I'd given him for his last birthday, back when I still believed that gestures of love could buy genuine affection. "Grandma, can you walk any faster? I want to post some content from the top deck before sunset," he said without looking up from the screen. His voice had that coldness it had developed in recent years, when he started seeing my physical limitations as personal inconveniences, rather than the inevitable realities of aging. This trip had been Amanda's idea, or at least, that's what she'd told me 3 weeks ago when she showed up at my small house in Omaha with the tickets already bought, and a smile that was far too wide plastered on her face. "It's a gift, Mom. To thank you for everything you've done for us," she'd declared, placing the documents on my kitchen table. The same table where I'd helped Ethan with his math homework throughout his entire childhood. It should have been a moment of pure joy. After years of begging for family time, of inventing excuses to call them, of pretending it didn't hurt when they canceled our Sunday dinners for more important commitments, I finally had a full week with them, a whole week where they couldn't escape, where we would be together 24/7, where maybe I could win back even a fraction of the love I felt had gradually been lost. But from the moment we set foot in the port of Miami, something felt off. Amanda constantly checked her watch, as if she were timing something I couldn't understand. Ethan held whispered conversations on his phone, always walking away when I got close. And they both treated me with an exaggerated politeness that felt more hurtful than the indifference I had grown accustomed to. My cabin was on deck 6, while theirs was on deck 8, in the premium suite area that cost 3 times as much as my basic room. "It's better this way, Mom. You need your rest, and we want to enjoy the ship's nightlife," Amanda had explained when she handed me my key card. The separation stung more than I was willing to admit, but I swallowed the disappointment as I had learned to do so many times before. That first night, we ate at the main buffet, surrounded by the buzz of happy families laughing and sharing stories about their day. I tried to make conversation, asking about Amanda's work at her digital marketing firm, about the business degree Ethan had dropped out of college for the year before to find himself with the money I'd been sending him monthly. "Business is good, Mom. Very good," Amanda would reply curtly, without elaborating. "In fact, we're considering expanding into the international market. There's a lot of money in e-commerce, especially if you know how to handle the right investments." Ethan would nod while fiddling with his phone, occasionally showing me pictures of influencers who made millions promoting products on Instagram. "The real money is in social media, Grandma. In creating content that generates passive income. Traditional jobs are a thing of the past." Their words sounded hollow, as if they were reciting a script they had rehearsed. When I tried to ask for specifics about their projects, their plans, about anything that would let me feel I was still a part of their lives, They both deflected to superficial topics or simply changed the subject. The second day was worse. At breakfast, Amanda criticized what I was wearing. "Mom, that dress looks so old. Didn't you bring anything more modern?" At the pool, Ethan complained that my slow movements were ruining his TikTok shots. At dinner, they whispered comments about other passengers while I ate in silence, feeling more and more like a stranger at what was supposed to be a family reunion. It was that second night that I started noticing something strange in their behavior. Amanda constantly insisted on making my drinks. "Let me get you some wine, Mom. You just relax." Ethan kept offering me pills for motion sickness. "Grandma, you look a little pale. Shouldn't you take something for your stomach?" Their gestures of care, which under normal circumstances would have filled my heart with joy, felt mechanical, forced, as if they were fulfilling an obligation rather than expressing genuine love. There was something in their eyes when they watched me drink or take medicine, an intensity that made me nervous without knowing why. On the third night, as the ship sailed towards the Bahamas, Amanda announced we would be dining at the cruise's most elegant restaurant. "It's a special celebration, Mom. I want it to be a night you'll never forget," she said, while applying a crimson-red lipstick in the mirror of my cabin. She was wearing a stunning black dress that highlighted her figure, the kind she reserved for truly important occasions. Ethan had also dressed up more than usual, wearing a crisp white shirt and a watch I recognized from the windows of luxury stores downtown. The restaurant, Il Palazzo, was decorated with crystal chandeliers and white linen tablecloths. The windows offered a panoramic view of the Caribbean under the moonlight, creating a romantic atmosphere that contrasted sharply with the tension I felt growing in my chest. Other diners whispered intimately at their tables, couples celebrating anniversaries, families toasting to special reunions. Amanda ordered the most expensive bottle of wine on the menu, a Barolo that cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. "Tonight we're toasting to you, Mom, for everything you've meant to our lives," she declared with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. As the sommelier poured the wine into fine crystal glasses, I couldn't help but remember all the times I had dreamed of a moment like this, all the nights I had stayed awake imagining deep conversations with my daughter, genuine laughter with my grandson, the feeling of being valued and loved by the two most important people in my world. But this reality felt like a poorly rehearsed play, where everyone knew their lines except me. As the waiter filled my glass with that Barolo that gleamed like blood under the restaurant lights, my mind began to wander to memories I had tried to bury for years. Amanda raised her glass with a practiced smile, but I couldn't stop thinking about another dinner 20 years ago, when she still called me Mommy, and her eyes would light up when she saw me come home from work. "To you, Mom," she said, but her words sounded hollow, like echoes lost in an empty cave. Ethan raised his glass too, but his eyes were fixed on his phone, as always. It was as if he were physically present but absent in every other way, a shell of the little boy who used to run to me screaming "Grandma" every time I showed up at his door. I vividly remembered that October day in 2003 when Amanda appeared at my house with Ethan in her arms, crying uncontrollably. "Mom, Rick left me. I don't know what I'm going to do," she had said between sobs, her running mascara forming black streaks down her cheeks. Ethan's father had decided that the responsibility of being a dad wasn't for him, and had run off to California with a woman 10 years younger, leaving behind a trail of broken promises and unpaid bills. For the next 8 years, my small 2-bedroom house became their refuge. I worked double shifts at the garment factory, coming home with numb fingers and an aching back, only to find Ethan waiting for me with his arms outstretched and a smile that could erase any fatigue. I made him dinner, helped him with his homework, read him stories until he fell asleep curled up against my chest. Amanda, meanwhile, focused on rebuilding her professional life. She studied marketing at night while I took care of Ethan, promising that, "One day, I'll pay you back for all of this, Mom." But those years, despite the exhaustion and financial hardship, were the happiest of my life. I woke up with purpose every morning, knowing that 2 people depended on me, that my love and sacrifice had a tangible meaning. I sold the gold jewelry I had inherited from my mother to pay for Amanda's college tuition. I liquidated my savings for the down payment on a larger apartment when Ethan started needing his own space. I worked weekends and holidays to afford his school supplies, his clothes, his medicine when he got sick. Every dollar I invested in them seemed like the best investment of my life, an emotional capital I was sure would return to me multiplied in love and gratitude. "Do you remember, Amanda, when you lived with me?" I asked suddenly, breaking the artificial silence that had settled over our table. Ethan used to have nightmares and would come to my bed every night. He said the monsters didn't dare come near when he was with me. Amanda forced a smile and took a long sip of wine before answering. "Yes, Mom. Those were different times." Her tone was distant, as if she were talking about someone else's life, not those years where we had been an inseparable team every single day. Ethan didn't even look up from his phone. His fingers moved quickly across the screen, probably answering messages or checking his social media. For him, apparently, those memories weren't worth a second of his attention. The move came when Ethan turned 11. Amanda had landed a well-paying job at a digital advertising firm, with a salary that allowed her to rent a stylish apartment in downtown Omaha. "It's time we had our own space, Mom," she'd told me while packing her things. "But we'll visit all the time. We'll be neighbors." At first, they kept that promise. They'd come over for Sunday lunch. Ethan would tell me about school. Amanda would show me pictures of her work projects. I'd make my Sunday pot roast, her favorite meal since she was a little girl, and fill the table with her favorite desserts. Those Sundays were my reason for living, the light I looked forward to all week. But gradually, the visits became less frequent. "I have an important meeting on Sunday, Mom. I'll make it up to you next week." "Ethan has a soccer game. We can't make it." "Something came up at work. Let's just talk on the phone." The excuses multiplied like a disease, each one more elaborate than the last, until Sundays became days of absolute solitude. I compensated for their absence by calling them daily. "How are you, sweetie?" I'd ask Amanda, but her answers became increasingly curt. "Fine, Mom. Busy." Click. Conversations that once lasted hours were reduced to exchanges of basic information, as if it were an obligation to be dealt with quickly to move on to more important things. With Ethan, it was even worse. During his teenage years, he developed a special talent for making me feel like an intruder in his life. When I called him, he would sigh audibly before answering, as if my voice were an annoyance interrupting more relevant matters. "Hey, Grandma," he'd say, in a tone that clearly conveyed he'd rather be doing anything else. "Do you need money for anything, honey?" I would always ask, and that was the only part of our conversations where his voice came alive. "Well, now that you mention it, there's this coding boot camp that would really help. The private college has better networking, Grandma. My friends are going on a trip to Europe, and it would be good for my resume." For years, I transferred a large part of my monthly pension to his bank account. I lived on rice and lentils so I could send him the money he spent on whims he considered essential for his future. Every sacrifice seemed like an investment in his happiness. A way to keep alive the bond I felt was fading month by month. When he turned 18, Amanda had explained that Ethan needed to become financially independent to build character. But paradoxically, the requests for money increased. "It's for his personal growth, Mom," Amanda would tell me. "He's exploring different business opportunities. Entrepreneurship requires seed capital." I never saw any concrete evidence of these supposed ventures. When I asked for details, Ethan would talk vaguely about digital projects and crypto investments that were always about to generate huge returns. His explanations were full of financial terms I didn't fully understand, but which sounded sophisticated enough to convince me he had a solid plan for his future. The truth was, I wanted to believe. I wanted to believe my money was helping build something valuable, that my sacrifices made sense, that one day Ethan would be successful and prosperous, and then he would remember with gratitude the grandmother who had believed in him when no one else did. "Mom, are you okay? You look lost in thought," Amanda said, interrupting my memories. Her voice had a note of impatience, as if my silence was a breach of courtesy towards her efforts to create a special dinner. "I was just remembering when you were little," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. "You were both so affectionate with me." Ethan finally looked up from his phone, but only to give me an expression I interpreted as a mix of pity and annoyance. "Grandma, that was a long time ago. People change, they grow up. His words hit me like a silent punch. It was as if he had reduced all those years of love and care to a childish phase he was now ashamed of, as if my affection was something he had outgrown upon becoming an adult. The waiter approached to ask if we wanted to order dinner, but I had completely lost my appetite. The wine glass sat untouched in front of me, its dark contents reflecting the restaurant lights like a liquid mirror showing a reality I preferred not to see. "Order for me," I told Amanda. "Whatever you think I'll like." She ordered without consulting me, choosing expensive dishes I probably couldn't finish. Everything about this dinner seemed designed to impress outside observers, not to create a genuine moment between family. It was an elaborate performance where I was both the audience and the unwitting star of a play I didn't fully understand. While we waited for the food, I noticed Amanda constantly checking her wristwatch, a Rolex I didn't remember seeing on her before. It was the kind of accessory that cost more than my entire net worth, an ostentatious display of wealth that contrasted oddly with the constant complaints about financial difficulties I had heard from her for years. During the main course, I began to notice behaviors that unsettled me in ways I didn't know how to express. Amanda insisted on pouring every drop of wine that went into my glass, taking the bottle from my hands with a tense smile whenever I tried to pour it myself. "Let me, Mom. You're trembling a little. We don't want to spill anything on your dress." I wasn't trembling. My hands were perfectly steady, as they had always been, but she repeated the gesture again and again, as if she had rehearsed the move. Ethan, for his part, had developed a sudden concern for my well-being that was bizarre coming from someone who had spent the last 5 years treating me as if I were invisible. "Grandma, you look a little pale. Are you sure you don't want to take something for motion sickness?" he asked, pulling a small bottle of pills I didn't recognize from his pocket. "I bought them at the ship's pharmacy. They're very effective for nausea." It was the 3rd time in 2 days he had offered me medication I hadn't asked for. Pills for motion sickness, for headaches, for better sleep. Every time I politely refused, he and Amanda would exchange quick glances they thought I didn't see. Glances filled with meaning that made me feel like I was being excluded from a conversation happening without words. "I don't need anything, thank you," I replied, but my refusal seemed to annoy them more than was reasonable. Ethan put the pills away with a sharp gesture, and Amanda downed her wine in one gulp, as if frustrated by something she couldn't control. The food arrived on huge white porcelain plates, garnished with herbs I didn't recognize. Amanda had ordered lamb for me, even though she knew perfectly well I had developed digestive issues with red meat after I turned 60. It was a small but revealing detail of how disconnected she was from my current reality. Or maybe, I thought with a pang of sadness, she simply didn't care enough to remember. "You know what, Mom?" Amanda said as she cut her salmon with precise movements. "I've been thinking about your financial situation." Her words took me by surprise. For years, we had carefully avoided that topic. I lived on my modest pension, supplemented occasionally by some sewing work I did for neighbors. It wasn't a fortune, but it allowed me to live with dignity and still send money to Ethan when he needed it. "My financial situation?" I repeated, not understanding where this was going. "Well, let's be realistic," she continued, avoiding my gaze as she spoke. "You're not getting any younger. And medical expenses, special care, all of that costs a lot of money these days. I've been researching some investment options that could help you maximize your savings." Ethan immediately joined the conversation, putting his phone aside for the first time all night. "Exactly, Grandma. The Bitcoin market is experiencing incredible growth. If you invest now, in a few years you could have double or triple your capital. It's the new way to build wealth." He spoke with the enthusiasm of someone who had memorized a sales pitch, using terms like digital assets and portfolio diversification that sounded impressive but empty coming from him. For the last 3 years, his only job had been managing the money transfers I sent him monthly. He had no experience in real finance, but he spoke as if he were an expert on international markets. "I don't understand any of that stuff," I admitted honestly. "My money is in the bank, where it's always been. It's safe there. But it's not generating returns, Mom," Amanda insisted, her voice taking on an urgent tone that made me nervous. "Inflation is eating away at your savings every day they sit in a basic checking account. You need more sophisticated financial instruments. Look, Grandma, Ethan said, pulling out his phone and showing me colorful charts that meant nothing to me. This guy made $2 million by investing only $50,000 in crypto. Imagine what you could do with all your assets. The word assets sounded strange applied to my modest savings. It was as if they were talking about figures that didn't match my reality. I wasn't a rich woman. I didn't have millions hidden in secret accounts. I only had the dollars I had saved penny by penny over decades of work, plus the equity in my small house that I had finished paying off 5 years ago. How much money are we talking about exactly? I asked, genuinely confused by the direction the conversation had taken. Amanda and Ethan exchanged another one of those meaningful glances. This time it was Amanda who answered, choosing her words carefully. Well, between your savings, your 401k, the equity in the house, we're probably talking about a considerable sum, enough to generate dividends that would let you live much better than you do now. It was true that my house had increased in value over the years. The neighborhood had gentrified, and properties similar to mine were selling for prices that surprised me when I saw them listed. But I had never considered selling. It was my home, the place where I had raised Amanda, where I kept all my memories, where I felt safe and protected. I don't want to sell my house, I said firmly, feeling a sudden need to set clear boundaries. No one's talking about selling anything, Ethan replied quickly, with a smile that was meant to be reassuring but didn't reach his eyes. We're just saying there are smarter ways to manage your resources, ways that would give you more freedom, more options. For the rest of the dinner, they continued to bombard me with information about investment opportunities, emerging markets, and financial strategies that were supposedly revolutionizing how people planned for their economic future. They spoke with such speed and confidence that I felt lost, as if I were attending a lecture given in a language I only partially understood. What disturbed me most wasn't the information itself, but the intensity with which they presented it. It was as if they had been waiting for this moment, as if the entire dinner had been a setup for this specific conversation. Their arguments sounded rehearsed, and the way they completed each other's sentences suggested they had discussed this topic between themselves before including me. Why are you suddenly so interested in my finances? I finally asked, interrupting one of Ethan's monologues about gold market fluctuations. The question caught them off guard. Amanda coughed lightly and took a sip of water before answering. It's not sudden, Mom. We've always been concerned about your well-being. It's just that now we have more knowledge about these things, more connections in the financial world. We want to make sure you're protected, Ethan added, his voice adopting a protective tone that contrasted strangely with years of indifference to my actual well-being. That you have enough resources for any emergency that might come up. Their words sounded reasonable on the surface, but something in their delivery gave me a deep sense of unease. For years, I had been the one worrying about their financial emergencies, sending them money when they needed it, sacrificing my own needs to make sure they were comfortable. This sudden concern for my economic security felt like a role reversal I didn't fully understand. Dessert arrived without me even noticing, an elaborate tiramisu that probably cost more than my meals for a whole week. Amanda poured me a glass of a golden liqueur she said was special for digestion, but it tasted bitter and burned my throat in an unpleasant way. Try this, Mom. It'll help with the heavy food, she insisted when I winced at the first sip. It's imported from Italy. Very expensive, the kind of luxury you could afford regularly if you optimized your investments. As I took small sips of the liqueur I didn't like, I noticed they were both watching me intently, as if waiting for some kind of specific reaction. Their gazes were intense, almost scientific, as if I were an experiment they were carefully monitoring. I feel a little dizzy, I admitted after finishing the glass. I think I've had more to drink than usual. Do you want us to walk you to your cabin? Amanda asked immediately, standing up from her chair with a speed that surprised me. You shouldn't be alone if you're not feeling well. No, I'm fine, I replied, though the truth was I felt strangely disoriented. I just need some fresh air. I left the restaurant walking slowly, concentrating on keeping my balance as my thoughts grew increasingly foggy. In the elevator to my cabin, I leaned against the cold metal wall and tried to understand what had been so disturbing about that dinner. I couldn't pinpoint anything specific, but the whole experience had felt like a performance, as if I had been the audience for a show I hadn't asked to see. That night, as I got ready for bed, I found an envelope on the nightstand that I didn't remember putting there. Inside were colorful brochures about investment plans and a handwritten note from Amanda. "Mom, think about it. We just want what's best for you. With love, Amanda and Ethan." I sat on the edge of the bed, reading those brochures full of promises of guaranteed returns and bright financial futures. The words blurred before my tired eyes, but a persistent sense of alarm was beginning to crystallize in my chest. Something was terribly wrong, but I still couldn't identify exactly what it was. The fourth night of the cruise dawned with a starry sky reflected in the calm waters of the Caribbean. From my cabin window, I could see the lights of the Bahamas flickering in the distance, like diamonds scattered on black velvet. I had slept poorly, waking up several times with a feeling of unease I couldn't shake. The investment brochures were still on my nightstand, their promises of instant wealth mocking my confusion. Amanda had insisted that we dine again at Il Palazzo, the same elegant restaurant from the night before. "It's our last chance, Mom. We get to port tomorrow and all this luxury will be over," she had said with a smile that seemed too bright, too forced. She had dressed even more elegantly than before, in a black silk dress I recognized from the windows of the most expensive boutiques downtown. Her jewelry was new too. Diamond earrings that caught the light every time she moved her head, a gold bracelet I had never seen on her before. Ethan had also dressed up with unusual care. He wore a suit that looked tailor-made, and his shoes were genuine Italian leather, the kind that cost more than many people's monthly salary. For a young man who was supposedly finding himself with no steady income, his wardrobe had improved remarkably in recent months. "Where did you get all these expensive clothes?" I asked as we walked to the restaurant, my genuine curiosity mixing with a growing concern. "The investments have been paying off," Amanda replied vaguely, adjusting her bracelet with a nervous gesture. "I told you we understand the financial market. Our portfolio has generated excellent returns this year." Ethan nodded with exaggerated enthusiasm. "Exactly, Grandma. That's why we want to help you too. Imagine having access to this kind of wealth. You could buy whatever you wanted, travel wherever you please, live like a queen." Their words sounded rehearsed, as if they had practiced this conversation before having it with me. There was something artificial in their excitement, a theatrical quality that was making me more and more nervous. The restaurant was filled with elegant couples and families celebrating special occasions. The atmosphere was romantic, with candles flickering on every table and soft music creating an intimate mood. But I felt like an actress forced to participate in a play whose script I didn't know. They seated us at the same table as the night before, by the panoramic windows with spectacular views of the sea at night. Amanda immediately ordered a bottle of French champagne, the kind of expensive celebration she reserved for truly special moments. "Tonight, we're toasting to important decisions," she announced as the sommelier uncorked the bottle with ceremonial elegance. "What decisions?" I asked, feeling like I was being led towards something I didn't understand. "The ones we're going to make about your future, Mom," she replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We've been thinking, and we believe it's time for you to take concrete steps to secure your financial well-being." Ethan pulled out his phone and started showing me investment apps, crypto growth charts, testimonials from people who had supposedly multiplied their capital in months. "Look, Grandma, this man invested $100,000 in Bitcoin and now he has over $1 million. This is the future of money." As he spoke, I noticed a young waiter approaching our table with a tray of glasses. He was a boy of about 25, with dark hair and kind eyes, wearing the impeccable uniform of the restaurant staff. He moved with the professional grace of someone used to serving demanding passengers. "Good evening," he said with an Italian accent as he began to fill our glasses with happily bubbling golden champagne. "I hope you enjoy your special evening." Amanda smiled at him with that automatic politeness she reserved for service staff. "Thank you. We're celebrating." The waiter nodded as he poured my glass, but I noticed he looked at me with a strange expression, as if he wanted to tell me something but didn't dare. His movements were careful, almost ceremonial, as he filled the champagne to the exact brim dictated by fine dining protocol. "I'm just going to the restroom for a moment," Amanda announced suddenly, getting up from the table quickly. "I'll be right back." Ethan immediately dove back into his phone, starting to record a video for his social media. "Dining in first class," he muttered to the camera. "Living the life that those who know how to invest smartly deserve." I was left alone for a moment, watching the bubbles rise elegantly in my champagne flute. The golden liquid caught the candlelight, creating tiny rainbows that danced on the surface. It was beautiful, but something about the situation filled me with a deep unease I couldn't explain. It was then that the waiter approached our table again, seemingly to adjust the cutlery and check that everything was in order. But when he leaned in to straighten my napkin, he whispered something that would change my life forever. "Ma'am," he said in a voice so low I could barely hear it, his lips hardly moving as he pretended to wipe something off the table. "Don't drink that. Please. I don't know you, but don't drink it." His words hit me like a lightning bolt. My heart started pounding so hard I was sure everyone in the restaurant could hear it. "Excuse me?" I whispered back, thinking I had misunderstood. The young man looked me directly in the eyes for a fraction of a second, and in that gaze, I saw something that chilled me to the bone. Compassion mixed with desperate urgency. "I can't say more," he murmured as he moved away from the table as if nothing had happened. "But listen to me. Dump it. Now." He walked away with the same professional ease with which he had arrived, leaving me sitting in my chair with the champagne flute in my trembling hands and 1,000 questions exploding in my mind like fireworks. Why had he said that? How did he know something was wrong? What had he seen or heard that I hadn't noticed? I looked at the glass with new eyes. The champagne bubbled innocently, its golden color as beautiful as before, but now every bubble seemed like a tiny warning. I remembered all the times during the trip that Amanda had insisted on pouring my drinks personally, all the pills Ethan had offered me, all the knowing glances they had exchanged when they thought I wasn't paying attention. My mind began to process memories with a terrible clarity. The night before, when I had felt dizzy after the digestive liqueur, the way they had both watched me so intently as I drank, the constant questions about my well-being, as if they were monitoring my physical condition, the conversations about my finances, about the need to make important decisions about my future. An image began to form in my mind, an image so horrible that my brain initially refused to accept it. But the more I thought about the events of the last few days, the more this terrible explanation for their strange behavior made sense. Ethan was still recording videos, completely absorbed in his phone. He'd occasionally look at me and smile, but his eyes had that coldness he had developed in recent years, as if I were just another object and not a person. "Grandma, aren't you going to drink?" "The champagne will go flat. In a moment," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady while my world silently crumbled around me. I'm savoring the moment. But the truth was, I was desperately trying to decide what to do with the information I had just received. Should I confront them directly? Should I pretend I hadn't heard anything? Should I seek help immediately? Amanda returned from the restroom with a radiant smile, as if she had used those few minutes of privacy to mentally prepare herself for something important. She sat down with a sigh of satisfaction and raised her glass in the air. "To the future," she said, looking me directly in the eyes. "To the brave decisions that lead us to prosperity." Ethan raised his glass as well, his eyes shining with an emotion I couldn't interpret. "To family," he added, "and to taking care of the people we love." They both looked at me expectantly, waiting for me to raise my glass and join their toast. The champagne was still bubbling in my flute, each bubble now a small reminder of the waiter's warning. My hands trembled slightly as I pretended to consider their words. "You know what?" I said finally, my voice surprisingly firm considering the emotional earthquake I was experiencing internally. "I'd rather wait until the food arrives. Champagne on an empty stomach makes me dizzy." Amanda's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, so briefly that someone who didn't know her intimately wouldn't have noticed. But I had been her mother for 43 years, and I recognized that micro-expression of frustration I had seen thousands of times when things didn't go exactly as she had planned. "Of course, Mom," she said, regaining her composure immediately. "Whatever you want." But her eyes followed me with a new intensity as I pretended to study the menu. and for the first time in days, I realized that I might have been in far greater danger than I had ever imagined. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in my narrow bed, listening to the soft hum of the ship's engines as we sailed towards our next destination. Every sound in the hallway put me on alert. Footsteps approaching my door, the ding of the elevator, voices whispering in languages I didn't recognize. The glass of champagne I had accidentally spilled on my napkin still haunted me. What was in it? What would they have done to me if I had drunk it? At 5 a.m, when I was sure Amanda and Ethan were asleep in their luxurious suites on the upper deck, I got dressed quietly and left my cabin. The ship had a 24-hour medical center, designed to handle emergencies for the thousands of passengers on board. I had seen the sign during our daily tours, but never thought I would need it for something so sinister. The hallway was deserted, lit only by emergency lights that cast long, strange shadows on the wood-paneled walls. My shoes made small noises against the thick carpet, sounds that seemed deafening in the early morning silence. Every step brought me closer to a truth that a part of me still hoped wasn't real. The medical center was on deck 3, behind glass doors that revealed a brightly lit interior. A doctor on duty, an older man with gray hair and glasses, looked up as I entered. His expression immediately changed from routine to concerned when he saw my face. "Are you all right, ma'am?" he asked. "Is this a medical emergency?" I need you to test something," I said, my voice sounding weaker than I intended. I pulled a paper napkin from my purse where I had saved a few drops of the champagne from last night. "I think someone put something in my drink." The doctor leaned forward, his expression turning serious immediately. In his years on cruise ships, he had probably seen all sorts of situations, from food poisoning to more serious cases of deliberate poisoning. "Was it a family member who served you the drink?" he asked as he took the napkin with latex gloves and placed it in a sterile container. "My daughter," I whispered. And those 2 words cost me more effort than any confession I had ever made in my life. "And my grandson." I saw something change in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or sadness. As if he had seen similar cases before. As if elder abuse by family members was more common than I had imagined in my worst nightmares. "I'm going to send this to the ship's lab immediately," he said in a gentle but professional voice. "The results will be ready in about 6 hours. In the meantime, do you feel safe? Do you need me to contact security?" I shook my head quickly. "Not yet. I need to be sure before I make any accusations." "I understand," he replied, but he gave me a card with his direct number. "If you feel any strange symptoms, any dizziness or nausea, call me immediately. And ma'am, stay in public places until we have the results." I returned to my cabin with my heart pounding so hard my chest ached. 6 hours. 6 hours to confirm if my own family was trying to poison me. 6 hours to decide what to do if my worst suspicions were confirmed. At breakfast, Amanda and Ethan acted seemingly normal. But now I noticed details I had overlooked before. The way Amanda constantly checked her phone, texting someone whose identity she kept secret. The way Ethan watched me when he thought I wasn't looking, studying my face as if searching for signs of something specific. "Did you sleep well, Mom?" Amanda asked as she spread jam on her toast. "You look a little pale." "Perfectly," I lied, forcing a smile. "Although I woke up early. The excitement of the trip, I guess." Ethan looked up from his phone with sudden interest. "How early? You weren't wandering around the ship alone, were you? It can be dangerous for someone your age." The question chilled me. How did he know I had left my cabin? Had they been watching me? Had they installed some kind of monitor in my room? "I just went to the lobby restroom," I answered carefully. "I needed to stretch my legs." But I saw something in his eyes that confirmed they knew more than they were admitting. A silent understanding passed between Amanda and Ethan, one of those wordless communications that completely excluded me. That morning, while we visited a port in Nassau, I pretended to be fascinated by souvenir shops while actually looking for opportunities to get away from them without arousing suspicion. In a small pharmacy, I bought a bottle of vitamins I didn't need, but it gave me an excuse to ask about poisoning symptoms. "Ma'am, looking for something specific?" the pharmacist asked. "Just information," I replied quietly. "If someone put something in an elderly person's food or drink, what would the symptoms be?" The woman looked at me with immediate concern. Are you feeling unwell? Do you need help? It's hypothetical, I insisted, though my voice trembled. Just curious. She told me about common sedatives, barbiturates, substances that could be used to make someone gradually lose consciousness without it being immediately obvious. Drugs that were colorless, tasteless, and would dissolve completely in alcohol or sweet drinks. These substances are very dangerous for older people, she warned. The heart, blood pressure, they can be fatal if used incorrectly. Fatal. The word echoed in my mind as I walked through the port's cobbled streets, pretending to admire the colonial architecture while Amanda and Ethan took selfies in front of every landmark. Were they trying to kill me? Or just incapacitate me enough to manipulate my financial decisions? I remembered the conversations about my investments, about the need to optimize my resources. Had they planned to drug me until I signed documents giving them control over my assets? Or had their plans gone further? Mom, are you okay? Amanda asked, noticing I had stopped dead in front of a jewelry store window. You look very thoughtful. I was just admiring that necklace, I replied, pointing to a pearl necklace that cost more than I spent in 6 months. It's beautiful. You could buy it, Ethan said with sudden enthusiasm. After we optimize your investments, this kind of luxury will be completely normal for you. The ease with which he talked about spending my money deeply disturbed me. He was no longer talking about future possibilities, but about concrete plans, as if my assets were something he already considered partially his. At noon, my phone buzzed with a text from the ship's doctor. Results are ready. Please come to the medical center at your earliest convenience. I made an excuse about needing motion sickness pills and headed to the medical center, my legs trembling. The doctor greeted me with an expression that confirmed my worst fears before he said a single word. Ma'am, I'm sorry to confirm your suspicions, he said, showing me a paper with lab results I didn't fully understand. The sample contained a significant amount of diazepam and zolpidem. They are powerful sedatives, especially dangerous when combined with alcohol. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. It was real. It was completely, terrifyingly real. How much? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. Enough to cause unconsciousness in someone of your weight and age, he replied gravely. If you had drunk that entire glass, you would have been unconscious for hours. And considering your age and potential pre-existing heart conditions, it could have been fatal. Fatal. That terrible word again. My own daughter and grandson had literally been trying to kill me. What do you recommend I do? I asked, my voice sounding strangely calm considering my world had just exploded into a million pieces. First, safety, he said firmly. Do not accept any food or drink from them under any circumstances. Second, documentation. I am preparing an official report of these findings. And third, do you have anyone on land who can help you? A lawyer? Trusted family? The authorities? I shook my head slowly. For years, Amanda and Ethan had been my only significant family. My friendships had gradually deteriorated as I became more emotionally dependent on them. I didn't have an independent support system, which had probably been part of their plan. Then we'll create one, he said with determination. The ship's captain has the authority to detain passengers if there is evidence of a crime. We can also contact the port authorities when we arrive back in the States. As I walked back to meet Amanda and Ethan, carrying physical evidence of their betrayal, I realized I had a fundamental decision to make. I could confront them directly, risking them denying everything and possibly escalating their attempts to harm me. Or I could play their own game, feigning ignorance while I documented more evidence and planned my counterattack. For the first time in years, I felt something like strength inside me. These people had gravely underestimated the woman they were trying to destroy, and they were about to find out exactly how wrong they had been. With the lab results tucked in my purse like a silent bomb, I returned to the group, faking the same weak smile I had been wearing all trip. But something fundamental had changed in me. I was no longer the naive grandmother who had boarded the ship 5 days ago. I was a woman who had discovered that her loved ones wanted her dead, and who had decided she was not going to let that happen. Did you find something for the motion sickness? Amanda asked when I approached where they were waiting for me by an ornamental fountain in the port square. The doctor gave me some pills, I replied, holding up the bottle of harmless vitamins I had bought at the pharmacy. He said they would make me feel better. I saw the immediate interest in her eyes, the way she exchanged a quick glance with Ethan. They were calculating something, probably wondering if these new pills would interfere with their poisoning plans. "What kind of pills?" Ethan asked, with a curiosity that tried to sound casual but was too intense to be genuine. "Something natural," I lied easily. "For balance. The doctor said many older people need them on cruises." For the rest of the afternoon, as we visited an old colonial fort and I pretended to be fascinated by its history, I developed my plan. I had learned something important from my conversation with the doctor. I needed more evidence. A single tested drink could be dismissed as a lab error or accidental contamination, but multiple, documented, and photographed poisoning attempts would be impossible to deny. That afternoon, when we returned to the ship, Amanda announced they had made reservations for dinner at the most exclusive Japanese restaurant on the cruise. "One last special celebration before our trip ends," she said. But I could now see the falseness in every gesture, hear the lie in every word. In my cabin, as I prepared for what I knew would be another night of poisoning attempts, I took out my phone and began to document everything. I photographed the lab results, recorded a video explaining my suspicions, and wrote a detailed email addressed to my lawyer in Omaha, which I scheduled to send automatically if I didn't confirm my well-being by a certain time. I also discreetly called the bank where I kept my savings. "I need to put a fraud alert on my account," I told the representative, "and I want any transaction over $100 to require direct phone confirmation with me." "Has something specific happened, Mrs. Miller?" the employee asked. "Prevention," I replied. "I have reason to believe someone might try to access my funds without authorization." The employee assured me the security measures would be active immediately. I also took the opportunity to ask about the process for changing the beneficiaries on my accounts, information I carefully filed away for future use. The Japanese restaurant was elegant and minimalist, with low tables and cushions where diners sat on the floor. The decor was authentic, with rice paper screens and a chef preparing fresh sushi behind a polished wooden bar. Amanda had specifically chosen a private table, separated from the main area by decorative screens. "Privacy for important conversations," she explained as we settled onto the cushions. "We need to talk about serious matters without distractions." Ethan sat across from me, his phone, as always, in his hands. But I noticed this time he wasn't playing games or scrolling through social media. He was recording discreetly, capturing video of our table and our conversation. Why would they need a visual record of this dinner? "Mom," Amanda began after the waiter took our orders, "we've been thinking a lot about your situation." "My situation?" I repeated, feigning confusion while internally bracing myself for what I knew was coming. "Your age, your health, your finances," Ethan continued, his voice adopting a serious tone that contrasted strangely with his usual indifference to my well-being. "It's time to be realistic about the future." Amanda pulled a folder of documents from her purse that I hadn't seen before. The papers looked official, with seals and signatures I didn't recognize. "We've contacted lawyers who specialize in estate planning," she said, extending the documents toward me. "They prepared these contracts that will allow you to transfer the management of your assets to younger, more capable people. People like us," Ethan added with a smile that was meant to be reassuring, but that I found absolutely terrifying. "People who understand modern markets, digital investments, the opportunities to multiply capital." I scanned the documents without fully understanding the legal jargon, but the phrases transfer of authority, total asset management, and designated beneficiaries jumped off the pages like red warning signs. These weren't financial advisory documents. They were documents for the legal appropriation of everything I owned. "I don't understand," I said, though I understood perfectly. "Why would I need to transfer control of my money? I'm perfectly capable of managing my own finances." "Mom, you're 73, Amanda replied with a tone of forced patience she had perfected to make me feel like a confused child. "Cognitive abilities naturally decline with age. It's normal for you to need help with complex decisions. Besides," Ethan added, "we've identified immediate investment opportunities that could triple your net worth in less than 2 years. But we need to act fast. The crypto and gold markets are seeing fluctuations that will only last a few weeks. As they spoke, our drinks arrived. Green tea for me, hot sake for them. Amanda immediately took the teapot and began pouring my tea with movements I now recognized as dangerously familiar. The same precision with which she had poured the wine, the champagne, every liquid she had insisted on preparing personally during the trip. "Allow me," she said with that fake smile I could now see so clearly. Japanese tea requires a special technique. But this time, I was ready. While pretending to be absorbed in reading the legal documents, I carefully watched her every move. I saw her right hand move toward her purse as she poured with her left. I saw the small white packet she discreetly took out, the way she emptied its contents into my cup while blocking the view with her body. My heart pounded, but I kept my expression neutral. This time, I had visual evidence. This time, I knew exactly what was happening in real time. "The tea smells delicious," I commented, raising the cup to my lips but not drinking. "Is it a special kind?" "Premium matcha," Amanda replied quickly. "Very relaxing. It will help with the stress of reviewing all these legal documents." Relaxing. The word had a new, sinister meaning. As I feigned a sip, I barely wet my lips and pretended to swallow. The liquid had a slightly bitter aftertaste not characteristic of the matcha I'd had before. "Now," Ethan continued, "about these documents. We just need you to sign here, here, and here." He pointed to specific lines on the papers, places where my signature would legally transfer total control of my assets to their names. "It's a lot to process," I said, feigning being overwhelmed while secretly feeling more alert and focused than I had been in years. "Can't I take these papers home and look them over with my own lawyer?" Amanda's smile tightened slightly. "Mom, the investment opportunities we've identified have very strict deadlines. If we wait too long, we'll lose out on millions in potential profits. Besides," Ethan added, "we're your family. Why would you need an outside lawyer when you have people who love you and only want what's best for you?" Love. The word sounded obscene coming from them, considering they were at that very moment trying to drug me to steal my life savings. "You're right," I said finally, pretending to give in, "but I'm feeling a little dizzy. Maybe it's the motion of the ship. Could we continue this tomorrow?" With a clearer head, I saw real frustration cross their faces. They had planned to settle this tonight, probably to drug me until I lost consciousness, and then either forge my signature or force me to sign while I was incapacitated. "Of course," Amanda said through gritted teeth. "Tomorrow will be perfect." But I knew that tomorrow was our last night on the ship. It would be their last chance, and I would be ready for them. As I walked back to my cabin that night, carrying the poisoned tea in a small bottle I had discreetly filled when they weren't looking, I realized I had evolved on this trip in ways I never would have imagined. I was no longer the passive victim they had expected. I was a woman who had discovered exactly what she was capable of when her survival depended on it. And tomorrow, they were going to find out they had chosen the wrong person to victimize. The last night of the cruise began with a thunderstorm that lit up the horizon in intermittent flashes. From my window, I could see the lights of the port of Miami slowly approaching, promising an end to this floating nightmare. But I knew Amanda and Ethan weren't going to let us reach land without trying to complete their plan one last time. At 7 in the morning, I had personally delivered all the evidence I had collected to the ship's captain. The samples of poisoned drinks, the lab results, photographs of the fraudulent documents, and audio recordings where I detailed everything I had discovered. Captain Rossi, a serious man in his 50s with decades of experience handling crises at sea, listened to me with an increasingly grave expression. "Mrs. Miller," he said after reviewing all the documentation, "this constitutes clear evidence of attempted poisoning and financial fraud. I have the legal authority to detain the suspects before we disembark." "Not yet," I requested, surprising him. "I need them to try one more time. I need witnesses, irrefutable evidence that they can't deny or manipulate." The captain frowned. "That's dangerous, ma'am. If they make a mistake, they won't," I replied with a confidence that surprised even me. "Because this time, I'll be prepared." We coordinated a plan. That night, during the farewell dinner in the ship's main ballroom, there would be security cameras discreetly positioned on our table. Plainclothes security personnel would be seated at nearby tables, and the ship's doctor would be present, ready to immediately test any suspicious substance. When I met Amanda and Ethan for breakfast, they acted with an urgency they hadn't shown before. Their smiles were tighter, their movements more nervous. Time was running out for them, and they knew it. "Mom," Amanda said without preamble after we ordered coffee, "we need to finish what we started last night. The documents, the signatures. It's our last chance before we lose the investments." "We've been in touch with our financial partners," Ethan added, showing me his phone where he had apparently been texting all morning. "They confirmed the Bitcoin opportunities we identified will only be available until midnight. After that, the prices are going to skyrocket." It was a lie, of course. All of it was a lie. But I pretended to be convinced by their urgent arguments. "All right," I said with a sigh I had practiced to sound resigned. "I suppose you understand these things better than I do. I'll sign the papers." I saw the immediate relief on their faces, quickly followed by something that chilled my blood. Predatory satisfaction, like hunters who had finally cornered their prey after a long and frustrating chase. "Perfect," Amanda said, touching my hand with false affection. "We'll do it during the gala dinner tonight. It will be perfect, romantic, memorable. Memorable." She had no idea how truly memorable it would be. That afternoon, as I prepared for what I knew would be the final confrontation, I received an unexpected call. It was Antonio Garcia, the Neapolitan waiter who had saved my life with his whispered warning 3 nights ago. "Ma'am," he said quietly when I answered, "I've been thinking about you since that night. Are you safe?" I briefly explained what I had discovered and what I was planning for that evening. His response surprised me. "I want to help," he declared firmly. "I've seen this before. Families abusing their elders. My own grandmother. That's why I warned you. I couldn't stay silent again." It turned out Antonio had witnessed much more than I knew. He had seen Amanda and Ethan meeting secretly with other passengers, men who looked like lawyers or financial consultants. He had overheard conversations about speeding up the process and maximizing the assets before disembarking. He had even photographed Ethan buying suspicious substances at previous ports. "I have everything documented," he assured me. "Photos, audio recordings, even a video of when they put something in your drink that first night I warned you." That information completely changed my understanding of the scope of their plan. This wasn't an impulsive decision made during the trip. It was a carefully planned operation, likely months in the making, with outside collaborators and financial resources that suggested a serious investment in my destruction. The gala dinner began at 8 p.m. in the ship's grand ballroom, decorated with exotic flowers and elegant crystal. Passengers wore their finest attire, creating a celebratory atmosphere that contrasted grotesquely with the drama that was about to unfold. Amanda had chosen a prominent table in the center of the ballroom, visible from multiple angles. "So everyone can see us celebrating your smart decisions," she explained as she helped me to my seat. But I knew the real location was strategic. If something went wrong, if I suddenly collapsed, there would be many witnesses to confirm I had simply suffered some sort of age-related medical episode. Ethan looked particularly dapper that night, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than my monthly rent. His shoes were genuine Italian leather, and he wore a watch I recognized as an authentic Rolex. For someone with no regular income, he had acquired a surprisingly luxurious wardrobe. "Where did you get the money for all those clothes?" I asked directly, abandoning the pretense of not noticing the inconsistencies in their financial stories. "Smart investments, Grandma," he replied with that smile I could now see was completely fake. "I told you we understand the markets. We've been generating steady returns for months. In fact," Amanda added, "part of our recent success came from anticipating future opportunities, investments based on assets we knew would soon become available. Assets that would soon become available. My assets. They had been spending money they hadn't even stolen yet, so certain were they that their plan would succeed." The dinner progressed with multiple elaborate courses, each paired with expensive wines that Amanda insisted on personally selecting. As on previous nights, she took charge of pouring all my drinks, maintaining that absolute control over what I consumed. But this time, I had the upper hand. Every glass she poured, every plate she touched before it reached me, was being monitored by discreet cameras and observed by trained security personnel. Antonio, dressed in his gala uniform, moved among the tables with professional ease, but I knew he was documenting every suspicious move. During the main course, Amanda finally brought out the legal documents. This time she had arranged them more presentably, in a sleek leather folder that looked official and respectable. "Mom," she said, her voice taking on a ceremonial tone, "this is the most important decision you'll make in the coming years of your life, the decision that will guarantee your financial security and your peace of mind." Ethan had positioned his phone discreetly to record the entire interaction. "For our family records," he explained when I noticed the camera. "This is a historic moment." Historic. He was right, though not in the way he imagined. As I pretended to review the documents, I watched Amanda prepare what would be her final attempt. This time, she didn't bother with subtlety. She openly took a small vial from her purse and emptied its contents directly into my wine glass, as if it no longer mattered if I saw her or not. "What did you just put in my drink?" I asked loudly, just enough for the nearby tables to hear. "Just vitamins, Mom," Amanda replied without blinking. "The ship's doctor recommended them to help with the stress of making important decisions." "What kind of vitamins?" I pressed, keeping my voice calm but clear. "B-complex," Ethan said quickly, "for cognitive function. Very important for people your age when they have to process complex financial information." It was their final story, their last attempt to explain why they needed to drug me, and it was the lie that would destroy them. I slowly rose from my chair, holding the poisoned wine glass aloft, where all the nearby diners could clearly see it. "Amanda," I said, my voice cutting through the restaurant's conversational hum, "for 5 days, I have been discovering that my own daughter and grandson have been trying to poison me." The silence that followed was absolute. All conversations in our section of the ballroom stopped immediately. People at nearby tables turned to stare, their expressions shifting from casual curiosity to genuine shock. "Mom, what are you saying?" Amanda asked, her voice jumping an octave as she tried to maintain her facade as the concerned daughter. "You're confused. Maybe you need to rest." "I'm not confused," I answered firmly. "I have lab results that prove you've been putting sedatives in my drinks. I have photographs of you doing it. I have witnesses." As if on cue, Antonio approached our table, accompanied by 2 of the ship's uniformed security officers. "Sir, ma'am," Antonio said in a clear voice, "for several days, I have witnessed deliberate attempts by these individuals to poison this lady." Captain Rossi appeared then, his presence immediately commanding the attention of the entire room. "Ms. Amanda Miller and Mr. Ethan Miller," he announced formally, "you are under arrest on suspicion of attempted poisoning and financial fraud." The shock on their faces was total. For 5 days, they had believed they were manipulating a vulnerable, naive old woman. They never imagined that I had been documenting their every move, building a case against them while playing the part of the perfect victim. "This is ridiculous," Amanda shouted, finally losing the control she had maintained for days. "She's a paranoid old woman. She doesn't know what she's saying." But the damage was done. The other passengers had heard my accusations, seen the evidence, witnessed their behavior. And when the security officers immediately tested the contents of my glass, confirming the presence of the same combination of sedatives found in previous samples, their protests became irrelevant. As they were led away in handcuffs, Amanda looked at me with an expression of pure hatred I had never seen on her face before. "You will regret this," she screamed. "You're nothing without us. You'll die alone and forgotten." But her words no longer had any power over me. For the first time in years, I felt completely free. 6 months later, as I watched the sunset from the porch of my new home on the outskirts of Naples, Florida, I reflected on how a whispered warning on a cruise ship had completely transformed my existence. The wine glass I now held contained a fine Napa Cabernet that I had chosen myself, without fear, without ulterior motives, simply because I liked the taste and I could afford it. The trial had ended 3 weeks ago. Amanda was sentenced to 12 years in prison for attempted poisoning with aggravating circumstances, financial fraud, and criminal conspiracy. Ethan, as a primary accomplice, received 8 years. The testimonies from Antonio, The forensic evidence and the recordings I had collected on the cruise had built a case so solid that their lawyers recommended they plead guilty to avoid even harsher sentences. During the legal process, I discovered the true extent of their plan. They had been coordinating with a network of scammers specializing in the elderly, a criminal organization that specifically targeted victims with modest but liquid assets. My house, my savings, even my small pension had been evaluated and priced as if they were merchandise in a catalog. Documents seized from their accomplices revealed they had spent over $15,000 in preparation for this reconciliation trip, including bribes to cruise employees who were supposed to grant them access to my cabin if the initial plan failed. They had also taken out additional life insurance policies in my name, documents I had never seen or signed, but which bore my professionally forged signature. It was a business to them, Detective Maria Sanchez, the investigator specializing in crimes against the elderly who had handled the case, had explained to me. Your assets represented an investment with a guaranteed return. They had calculated everything: operational costs, projected profits, even asset liquidation timelines. The mathematical coldness with which they had planned my demise struck me harder than the emotional betrayal. It wasn't passion or desperation that had motivated them. It was pure, calculated greed, the complete objectification of a woman who had spent decades of her life loving them unconditionally. But that revelation had also freed me from any residual guilt. For weeks after the arrest, I had wrestled with thoughts of, what could I have done differently? Or, how did I not see the signs sooner? Knowing I had been the target of professional criminals, not just family members who had made bad choices, allowed me to process the betrayal without taking responsibility for it. The house where I now lived was purchased with money recovered from accounts Amanda had opened using my stolen information. During the investigation, authorities discovered they had been siphoning small amounts from my pension for nearly 3 years, transfers so minor I'd never noticed, but which added up to a considerable sum. It was a modest but beautiful property, with a garden where I had started growing roses and herbs. It had 2 bedrooms, one for me and one I had converted into a writing studio. I had discovered at 74 that I had a talent for writing. My memoir of the cruise had become a book that a small publisher had agreed to release, a narrative they hoped would help other seniors recognize and prevent similar situations. The writing process had been therapeutic in ways I hadn't anticipated. Each chapter allowed me to process a different layer of the trauma, transforming painful experiences into useful lessons for others. The letters I received from readers, especially from women who recognized familiar patterns in my story, confirmed that my experience had not been in vain. Antonio had kept in touch. He had left his job on the ship to study social work, inspired by what he had witnessed. Seeing what happened to you made me realize I want to dedicate my life to protecting vulnerable people, he had told me during one of our weekly phone calls. I want to be the voice that whispers warnings before it's too late. I had also developed unexpected friendships with other survivors of family abuse. Detective Sanchez had connected me with a support group where we shared experiences and recovery strategies. It was comforting to discover I wasn't alone, that elder abuse by family was more common than society publicly acknowledged. One of the women in the group, Mercedes, had been the victim of a similar scheme perpetrated by her son and daughter-in-law. The hardest part, she had told me during one of our meetings, isn't losing the money or even discovering the betrayal. It's rebuilding the ability to trust your own judgment. She was right. For months after the cruise, I had questioned every decision, every intuition, every assessment of other people's intentions. How could I have been so blind for so long? What other signs had I ignored? How could I be sure I wouldn't be victimized again? But gradually, with the help of therapy and the support group, I had regained confidence in my instincts. More importantly, I had learned to value my own company. The years of loneliness that Amanda had threatened as a punishment had turned into a freedom I had never experienced before. For the first time in decades, my decisions were entirely my own. I could eat what I wanted, travel when I pleased, and spend my money on whims I didn't have to justify to anyone. I had taken painting classes, joined a book club, and even adopted an orange cat named Leo who purred on my lap while I wrote. Financial independence had also given me perspective on how much money I had wasted trying to buy love. The calculations were devastating. In 5 years, I had transferred over $30,000 to Ethan for his supposed entrepreneurial projects. I had paid for family vacations, expensive gifts, even the security deposit on Amanda's first apartment. All that money had been an investment in a relationship that was never real. I had been buying time with people who saw me as a financial resource, not as a beloved mother or grandmother. Now that same money allowed me to live comfortably, travel, and contribute to causes I truly cared about. I had established a small foundation that provided free legal assistance to elderly victims of family abuse. It was a way of turning my painful experience into something constructive. The foundation also funded educational programs at community centers, teaching seniors how to recognize the signs of financial and emotional manipulation. "Knowledge is the best defense," was the motto we adopted, words that would have changed my life if I had known them 5 years earlier. The last contact I had with Amanda was a letter she sent from prison 6 weeks after her sentencing. It contained no apologies or acknowledgement of responsibility. Instead, it was a list of complaints about prison conditions and requests for money for her commissary account. Even from behind bars, she still saw me as a source of funds. I threw the letter away without responding, not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation. I had learned that some relationships cannot be fixed, and that trying to maintain toxic ties only perpetuates the harm. Gail never tried to contact me. His silence was probably the most honest gift he had given me in years. The sunset from my porch painted the sky in shades of gold and purple that reminded me of the sunsets I had admired from the cruise ship before I knew the truth about my companions. But now I could enjoy the beauty without the shadow of betrayal, without the anxiety of pleasing people who had never valued me. Leo jumped onto my lap, interrupting my reflections with demanding purrs. I stroked him as I finished my wine, thinking how different my life was now compared to just a year ago. The loneliness I had feared for so long had revealed itself to be a form of peace I had never known. The freedom I had gained by losing my fake family was more valuable than any relationship built on lies and manipulation. Were there difficult days? Of course. Moments when I missed the illusion of family love, when nostalgia made me question if I'd made the right decisions. But those moments of doubt vanished quickly when I remembered the poisoned glass of champagne, the coldness in Amanda's eyes as she was arrested, the legal documents designed to steal my future. The truth was, I had traded a family that hated me for a life that was completely my own, and that was the best deal I had ever made. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, I got up to make dinner. Just for me, exactly how I liked it, without having to consider anyone else's tastes or demands. It was a simple but profound luxury I would never again take for granted. Tomorrow, I would meet with the other survivors from the support group. Next month, I would travel to Denver for a conference on preventing elder abuse. The month after that, my book would be officially released. I had plans, dreams, goals that were entirely mine. At 74, I had learned that it's never too late to start a new life, an authentic life, a life where self-love matters more than the love of others bought with sacrifice. The question I ask myself now, after everything I've been through, is simple. Have you ever experienced something similar? Or do you know someone who has? I ask you to share your experience in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, if you recognize something familiar in my words, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. These stories need to be told. They need to reach those who need to hear them most. Because we all deserve true love, genuine respect, and the freedom to live without fear.